Iran's regime has been heavily struck, and Beijing finally couldn't hold back. It even begged the US and Israel to stop the attack. Meanwhile, Taiwan unexpectedly became embroiled in a media storm. According to China's state-run media Xinhua News Agency, Foreign Minister Wang Yi called Israeli Foreign Minister Gideon Saar, urging the immediate cessation of military actions. Wang Yi stated that military force cannot truly resolve the problem and will only lead to severe consequences. He boldly claimed the real value of military power lies not on the battlefield, but in preventing war. He also emphasized that China always maintains a fair position on Middle East issues and will continue to play a constructive role in promoting de-escalation. However, this statement prompted a lot of mockery from netizens. Taiwanese netizens said this message was probably aimed at Taiwan's blue and white camps. They frequently criticized the Lai Ching-te government, claiming that the Democratic Progressive Party's military purchases were intended to enhance defense capabilities and that their goal was to start a war. Netizens sarcastically commented, "Blue and white, come and listen. Your big brother says military strength is to prevent war." But the KMT says the Lai government's military purchases are to start a war. Is something wrong here? As expected, they're not embarrassed. It's only embarrassing for others. And only China can say something so shameless. It is well known that independent social media outlets with CCP ties and so-called military commentators have become infamous. Their analyses are always most accurate when you reverse them. The CCP has also cultivated infiltration forces and spokespeople in Taiwan over the years, and their performance in this instance is particularly notable. After the US and Israeli forces completely wiped out Iran's highest leadership, members of Taiwan's blue and white camp suffered another major setback. Former legislator Guo Chengliang's remarks were dug up. Just a day before the war, Guo Chengliang confidently analyzed the situation, saying,
The
US is in a difficult position right now. Without internal support, what are you going to strike? What's your target? You can't possibly expect American planes to just go in and bomb recklessly. He also worriedly asked, are you going to decapitate that president and Khamenei? Does that even make sense? Even if there is war, Israel can't even get in. Israel is 1,300 kilometers away from Iran. How can they strike? You won't have enough ground troops. If the US really wants to attack Iran, it would need at least 50,000 troops to make any significant progress. Iran is 1.6 million square kilometers, with a population of 90 million.
However, as soon as Guo made this statement, the US swiftly carried out the decapitation of Khamenei within 24 hours, and without the need for ground forces, they wiped out dozens of high-ranking officials, including Iran's defense minister. Not only that, Israel, located 1,000 kilometers away, also participated in the attack, completely going against Guo Chengliang's predictions. Guo Chengliang's remarks once again became a reverse indicator, but he stubbornly stuck to his guns. He even claimed that the US would still need to conserve its stockpiles and that the Tomahawk missiles aimed at Iran could only be used for 7 days. Now even his pro-CCP media followers can't stand it anymore. They commented on related posts. Every time, you're wrong and say they won't strike, but now they've struck for 7 days. Can we still trust Guo Chengliang's words? In response to netizens mocking his predictions, Guo Chengliang made another shocking statement on March 1st. He spoke during the political talk show International Fastball. He claimed that the 86-year-old dictator Khamenei insisted on going to his office that day, intentionally to martyr himself. This conspiracy theory sparked a massive online backlash. On the show, Guo confidently analyzed that as the national leader, Khamenei should have been hiding in an underground bunker, but instead he went to the office with his daughter, son-in-law, and several high-ranking officials, creating an atmosphere of martyrdom, as if he wanted to be bombed in order to inspire millions of Iranians to unite and take to the streets. Guo Chengliang further criticized the US and Israel for launching their attack while progress was being made in mediation talks, likening their actions to a Pearl Harbor attack. He also cited remarks by Chinese martial arts fraudster Ma Baoguo. Ma said that Trump lacked martial arts ethics, or sportsmanship. He concluded by stating that unless the US mobilized 1 million ground troops, airstrikes alone would never be able to overthrow the regime solidified by the Iranian Revolutionary Guard. However, this theory of self-sacrifice clearly failed to convince a wide array of netizens. Social media platforms like PTT were filled with sarcastic comments. Netizens criticized Guo's logic as extremely creative and amusing. In response to Guo Chengliang's performance, Professor Chen Shifen, a scholar living in the US and writing under the pen name Wang Da-rui, sharply criticized his statements as logically flawed. Wang Da-rui posted on Facebook, and mocked Kuo's earlier prediction that the U.S. wouldn't dare to strike. When the U.S. not only deployed forces but also decapitated Iran's supreme leader, Kuo became a laughingstock in the media. Undeterred, he once again claimed that Khamenei's death was a deliberate martyrdom. Wang Dare humorously noted that Kuo's mystical interpretation earned him a title of a top idiot, and he became a media joke again. Wang Dare explained that if we consider whether the U.S. would strike or not, and whether Khamenei would be decapitated or martyr himself, decapitation was the most likely scenario, and the actual result. Martyrdom was another possible outcome. It was unlikely, since Iran and the U.S. had prearranged it. Chen Liang's prediction of no strike combined with martyrdom is logically impossible. Since the U.S. did strike and Khamenei was killed, Kuo's prediction was clearly wrong. Wang Dare sarcastically added that if Kuo Chengliang's predictions and claims were true, the possibility would be that Iran and the U.S. had secretly colluded. He continued to mock. Originally, the U.S. was not going to strike, as Kuo predicted, but Khamenei's determination to martyr himself was so strong that he asked the U.S. to intervene. The amazing thing is that Trump agreed, and to fulfill his martyrdom wish, Khamenei helped the U.S. complete the mission by shutting down China-provided radar systems, preventing missile interception, and not allowing fighter jets to take off. Wang Dare sarcastically remarked that the most thoughtful part was that Iran's supreme leader had preemptively informed the U.S. military of his whereabouts. In other words, the U.S. was initially unwilling to attack Iran, but at the request of Iran's supreme leader, the U.S. sent troops to assist him in fulfilling his martyrdom wish. More importantly, Chinese weapons weren't as ineffective as some might think. If the Iranian supreme leader hadn't ordered the shutdown of all air defense systems, U.S. fighter jets would not have been able to move freely, and would certainly have been shot down by China's air defense systems. Wang Dare also added a bonus explanation about Venezuela, claiming that the Venezuelan president wasn't captured by the U.S. forces, but had deliberately surrendered. Even before the U.S. intervened, the Venezuelan president had publicly said, "Come and arrest me." Wang Dare sharply criticized. Kuo Chengliang forgot to advocate for this, losing an opportunity to whitewash Chinese-made weapons. Some netizens expressed confusion, questioning why a dictator would bring his succession team and biological family to die together. Regarding the outlandish remarks from Taiwan's pundits, the DPP's China department warned that these inaccurate statements might not just be simple misjudgments, but instead are packaged as Taiwan's internal voices and part of a cross-border information warfare strategy. The DPP urged society not to be misled by false information. On March 1st, the DPP's China department posted, noting that if it were just a single mistake, it could be attributed to unverified facts or occasional inaccuracies. However, what is concerning is that these judgments always turn out to be wrong in the same direction, and that the narrative is highly consistent. The DPP's China department stated, "This is no longer just a mistake, it's a pattern." The post also referenced the so-called U.S. surprise attack on Venezuela, noting that besides Kuo Chengliang, there was a group of similarly mistaken pro-blue pundits, referred to as the 11 idiots of the major crash site. However, despite repeatedly being proven wrong, these commentators still claim to society that they're just analyzing or simply judging based on facts, but their conclusions continue to be overturned by reality. The post further pointed out that there is a recurring familiar script in Taiwan's information environment. Specific media and political talk shows first introduce seemingly insider topics, which then are edited and spread on social platforms. Pundits add their own commentary. Finally, Chinese state media and unified front platforms amplify it as Taiwan's internal voices, which then circulate back into Taiwanese society, creating new divisions and counterattacks. The DPP's China department emphasized that in the context of cross-border information warfare, what's most valuable is not the truth, but quotable words. As long as someone in Taiwan's media says something, it can be packaged as Taiwan's internal voices and processed into propaganda materials, continuously feeding narratives of distrust in the U.S., distrust in the military, distrust in the government, and distrust in democracy. These judgments often come with no consequences, and pro-blue pundits can repeat the same tactics with a new issue the next day. Analysts note that within the CCP system and among certain pro-CCP political parties, truth and facts are not only worthless, but are the very information they fear and strive to cover up. Lies are what the CCP and its allies rely on for survival. These so-called pundits in Taiwan are essentially no different from the many disreputable military experts in China. They are not simply naive, but are malicious. It is also noteworthy that while Taiwan's various sectors are reacting fervently to the Iran conflict, the U.S. government has also turned its attention to Taiwan. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio stated on March 3rd,
You're about to see, we're going to unleash Chang on these people in the next few hours and days.
We're going to unleash Chang on these people in the next few hours and days. You're going to really begin to perceive a change in the scope and intensity of these attacks. The phrase unleash Chang likely refers to Chiang Kai-shek, the former leader of the Republic of China. He was associated with strong military leadership and opposition to communism. Rubio mentioned that all operations are proceeding according to plan, and some even ahead of schedule. He emphasized that the two strongest air forces in the world would destroy a terrorist regime, depriving it of its deterrence and its ability to threaten neighboring countries, or continue its nuclear ambitions. Rubio further said, "They were willing to slaughter their own people in the streets. Imagine what they would do to us." The phrase, unleash Chiang, raised considerable attention, with many speculating about its meaning. Veteran media personality Tang Hao posted on X, commenting that the most interesting news today was Rubio suddenly invoking Chiang Kai-shek. He said, "We're going to unleash Chiang," which can be translated as, "We're going to mobilize Chiang." This remark immediately sparked discussion on American social media, with many asking, what does Chiang mean? Even though a few people found out that Chiang referred to Chiang Kai-shek, they didn't understand why Rubio mentioned the old Chinese leader. Tang Hao explained that in political and military circles, senior officials or military officers sometimes use Chiang Kai-shek as a metaphor for strong, overwhelming military action. This reference relates to Chiang's leadership in China's resistance against Japan during World War II and his firm stance against communism. Tang Hao found it even more interesting that Rubio, when targeting Iran, evoked Chiang Kai-shek, especially since everyone knows that China is Iran's primary backer, and Chiang Kai-shek was the CCP's greatest fear during the anti-communist campaigns. Tang said, whether Rubio meant it or not, bringing up old Chiang to fight Iran might also signal that the next cleanup target would be Beijing communists. Moving on, there's another interesting piece of news. While heavy fighting rages within Iran, reports suggest that Iran is severely divided internally. Some blame the destruction of the supreme leader and the military's collapse on insiders, and points fingers at Ismail Qani, the commander of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps' Quds Force. He has reportedly survived multiple assassination attempts by Israel. Qani, who took over from the slain Qasem Soleimani in 2020, oversees Iran's foreign military operations and regional proxy forces, including Hezbollah in Lebanon and the Houthi rebels in Yemen. Recent rumors suggest that during multiple rounds of Israeli strikes, Qani has repeatedly escaped unharmed. He mysteriously disappeared before and after key meetings, even surviving attacks following meetings with Khamenei. As a result, some have accused him of being infiltrated by Israeli forces, or even providing information to Mossad. In addition to Qani, high-ranking members of Iran's police force have also been drawn into public debate. Online posts claim that Iran's police chief, Ahmad Reza Radan, may have used a code to transmit messages to Israel, signaling the completion of an assassination mission. Additionally, there are reports that the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps has launched an investigation into Qani, even detaining and interrogating him. Meanwhile, rumors have spread concerning Khamenei's son, Mojtaba. Reports suggest that Mojtaba was killed in the explosion, and Khamenei had summoned military leaders just 2 days before the incident to entrust him with his son's succession. He reportedly asked for their support while planning to retreat to a hidden underground location. Analysis suggests that the high-ranking Iranian officials' collective betrayal stems from their disillusionment with Khamenei's dangerous policies, including plans for dynastic succession. These wise insiders no longer want to be involved and risk being eliminated by U.S. forces, so they have collectively sold out the Khamenei regime. There are even rumors that Khamenei's son is not dead and that Khamenei himself is the mole. All these signs are seen as the most significant indicators before the collapse of a regime. Turning back to Beijing, it is widely known that Iran is essentially Beijing's proxy. Now, Beijing has lost face and has resorted to pleading and calling for an end to the attacks. As Iran's vanguard, it too must echo the calls for negotiations. It is rumored that Iran repeatedly requested peace talks, attempting to halt U.S. military action. The CCP stepped in as a mediator to buy time, only to later unexpectedly trigger a nuclear test as a way to continue threatening the world. However, this scheme has already been seen through by President Trump. On March 3rd, Trump shared an article from the Washington Post. Their air defense, Air Force, Navy, and leadership is gone. They want to talk. I said, too late. Trump firmly stated that he was unwilling to compromise or negotiate, emphasizing that the U.S. military's mid to high-level weapons are completely unlimited. He also criticized reports claiming that U.S. defense missiles and other important weapons would soon run out, calling such content incorrect and shameful. Analysts note that both Trump and Rubio's statements are well coordinated and identical in rejecting China and Iran's pleas for mercy. Trump understands that there is no turning back once an arrow is launched. The only solution to deal with China and its most brutal war proxies is their complete annihilation. For the CCP's senior leadership and General Secretary Xi Jinping, being rejected and losing face is not the worst part. What truly worries them is that their suffering has only just begun. As they face the next target of U.S. military pressure, they will find a particular phenomenon. They'll start to suspect everyone around them. Everyone will look like a potential traitor.